Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Roll Call. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. And for those of you that are new to Roll Call, what is Roll Call? Roll Call is when the cops get together for the day shift, the 4 to 12 and the midnight, and they get their assignments from the sergeants and lieutenants, and that famous pop culture reference of Hill Street Blues and Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, let's be careful out there. So that's what Roll Call is about. It's been about a week since I've been on. We had some storms that knocked out the internet for a couple of days, so things were going a little crazy. So we're back. We're getting back to our normal schedule coming up, and with vacations and everything else coming up, those things will be in flux. So without any further ado, we're going to bring in everyone's favorite pop culture reference reporter, Lauren Conlin. Good to see you, Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's everything going with you?
I'm good. I'm good. No complaints. No complaints. It's a little rainy in New York this morning. My husband's taking my daughter to a baseball game, so I'm hoping it doesn't get rained out for them.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. It's been crazy, crazy weather. Oh, Jay just entered the chat. How you doing, Jay? So, all right, there's so many things going on, so many pop culture references going on too. Oh, and just for the note too, I eliminated guys in the mods. I eliminated the Nightbot. Too much crazy stuff was going on with Nightbot. I got some complaints.
What is that?
Nightbot was something that would help me put out the links. So the mods will have to just, if like Lauren's pop crime YouTube channel is in the show notes. If you could just copy and paste it in that would just be great. But yeah, I had to get Jay, I had to get rid of Nightbot. It was just driving people nuts. So and there was some issues in the chat too. So we'll talk about that another time.
Okay.
But anyway,
okay.
So let's jump into probably one of the most famous cases that'll be coming up soon. I think it starts in November. And that's Keefe D's case, who has been charged with the alleged killing of Tupac Shakur, right? So this thing is finally coming after how many years, right? Whatever.
Yeah, decades, 27 years, just about. This is pretty crazy. I think that Keefe D is, he is regretting running his mouth at this point, because they are actually taking everything that he said on podcasts, on documentaries, from his memoir, and they are finding evidence to support this at this point. So last week, what prosecutors found, they've been working tirelessly with investigators as well, because this was a long time ago. So it's tough to find, evidence to support that he was in Las Vegas, even though he's running his mouth. His lawyers have been very staunch in saying, you guys have no evidence to support that he was even in town. Well, until last week. So it turns out they found hotel records that were reserved under his wife's name, Paula Clemens. So literally, and this was found through a stack of papers. Obviously, it wasn't, you can't go into a computer and see who was there. But yeah, the cops said they weren't really looking for a name like Paula Clemens. They were looking for more Southside Crips names that they already knew about. So they found her name and they're like, we got you. Now we know that you were at, it's the Park MGM is what it's called now. Back in the day, it was called something else. I have to look that up. But now they're going to go through all of the footage, the CCTV surveillance footage, and they are going to look for Keefe D. That is their goal at this point, because if you recall the footage that came out from the MGM with Tupac, his last fight, they looked into that hard, and Keefe D was not there. That fight was between Tupac and Keefe D's nephew, actually, Orlando Anderson, who Keefe D has said was the one that pulled the trigger. Orlando Anderson died in 1998 in a gang-related shooting. And Keefe D has said, he was the one that orchestrated the shooting between Tupac and Suge, and had Orlando do it, and he gave him the murder weapon. However, we know the murder weapon has never been found. But this is bad for Keefe D. This is very, very bad for him. Like I said, I think they're going to put something together here beyond the fact that he was in town, but I don't know that they need to. He's going around, and his lawyer, and you can ask, how do you even say, or what's your defense here when you've been, talking shit for how long? And his defense is well, he was just trying to be relevant. He made it all up. I'm like, what? It's crazy.
Well,
Crazy.
yeah, I mean, we'll have to see exactly how all that plays out, right? So the I saw an article in the Sun, the U.S. Sun, and they were talking
Yeah.
about some specific things. They also had mentioned that he was working in a capacity as an undercover for law enforcement too, Keefe D.
Oh, yeah.
According,
So he thought, oh, did I freeze?
that's okay. We can still hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I'm gonna have to restart. But yeah, that's the reason he actually, this is so awkward. Sorry. I really hope it unfreezes, Joe, but I might have to reboot myself.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that really fast. Do you mind?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. All right,
I'll
I'll
talk
do
to the
that.
crowd. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. As Lauren fixes that, we'll we'll see. Yeah, the audio was fine, but we'll see if we can get her back on with the video. So yeah, this whole Tupac thing is actually interesting because as part of the criminal investigation, one of the things that you always look for is what I refer to as MOM, and this might be a quiz question, I guess. Means, opportunity, and motive. Right, so you try to get the answers to all three of those things, and then you have your suspect. So in this case, the opportunity is really important because if the defense can prove that the suspect, this guy Keefe D, whose real name is Dwayne Keith Davis, if they could prove that Dwayne Davis is out of Las Vegas when the shooting happens,
Sorry.
then they have, then they're going to have that reasonable doubt. And I was just explaining about the opportunity,
Oh,
and that's why having him, if prosecutors can put him in Vegas, this is huge
yeah.
because if they can't, right? I
Mhm.
was saying he doesn't have the opportunity in order to commit the crime, and there's your reasonable doubt, and
Yeah.
that would go a
Yeah.
long way for the defense.
Well, yeah, at this point, like I said, they saw that his wife made a reservation. They even saw, I didn't say this, they saw that Orlando Anderson made a reservation as well under his own name at a different hotel, the Excalibur. I don't even know if that's still around. I'm not super familiar with Vegas. But the reason Keefe D ran his mouth so hard is because you mentioned, I don't know if you got into this, but he worked for the task force and he was a proffer when they were investigating the notorious BIG's death. And so he pretty much thought that he had immunity. And I was talking about this, like, I don't know why he necessarily thought that if they didn't have anything signed or if he had federal immunity. I have no idea what the deal was with that, but for whatever reason, he thought that he would never be charged on this. So this is crazy.
Yeah, one of the articles I was reading about it is that he believed that he had the immunity for both cases, and they think that's what, but it was just for the notorious Big case, and he was talking and including information from the Tupac case, and there's where he kind of can get himself in a little trouble. Plus,
Yes.
we used to call it Queen for a Day. It's called something different everywhere, but if you get caught lying or something like that, the deal's off. So I mean, there's some other issues that
Yeah.
but we are unaware of exactly what happens. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you were gonna, yeah. According to his defense attorney, though, I saw right before we got on, he said that he's going to be out free in a couple of days, and that there's a movie deal on the table, and you know,
I don't know about that. He posted bond a few months ago, but the judge was like, nope, because it was something about like he won't stop doing these interviews, and it's all for money. And you can watch some of these interviews that he does on YouTube or wherever, and somebody will say, oh, I want to talk about something from the book, and he's like, no, buy the book. All he cares about is making money. And at one point when he was discussing this, he was actually serving, I don't know if you know, it was like a 5 to 7 year sentence for drugs. So at that point, like he was also just, talking crazy to try to have status in prison. And that got back as well to, law enforcement. So, I mean, I think the really interesting part of this too is the fact that he claims that Diddy paid him $1 million to do this and orchestrate this hit on Suge and Tupac. Obviously the rival Death Row Bad Boy Records, but all we have here is Keefe D's word. And look, I'm going to be honest. Everything that he said happened so far. They've kind of proved that law enforcement. You know what I mean? Based
yeah.
on his testimony and him running his mouth. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's truth to that. I just don't know how they're going to prove it.
Yeah, proving things are always, I mean, people can come up with whatever they want to come up with, right? You can come
Of
up with
course.
other allegations you want, but
Yeah.
proving them in court is the big deal, right? So you can say, oh, I have this or I have that, and I know this and I know that, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything in the real court. The police have to go to a district attorney and say, here's the allegation, here's the evidence, and this is what proves it. If you can't do that, the district attorney's going to laugh you right out the door.
I know. And Joe, it's so interesting how many people don't realize this, not to digress, but like I was just talking to my mom about Brian Koberger. And, like many of us are just like, oh, we believe he's guilty, but we also think that it's not this open and shut case here. And she's like, what? Why? And it's like, just because she rips things from the headlines. And I don't blame her for that. That's, you know what I mean? She's not like us where they dive in and, but they're talking out of their butts from the headlines. They're like, it's not open and shut. And you're like, no, we can think he did it because he probably did do it, but we have to prove it. So it's just like, look at OJ.
Well, I mean, that's just with any case. I mean, there's lots of things that get thrown out. I mean, we're going to get into the Karen Reed case in a minute because that's coming back. But, just same thing. I mean, there's lots of allegations and, are you able to prove them is a whole other situation, right? But the issue that comes down to in this whole Keefe D thing is, there was, I think, I read one of the articles that said that Diddy's name was mentioned like 70 something times in all this, whatever. And we know that Diddy's got his own issues happening. So I want to see how that plays into that case too. I mean, if it affects him based on what we hear in this case. But like I said, how believable is Keefe D? That's going to be a whole other story in regards to how this case proceeds.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so silly, and you watch him speak, and he's tough to listen to. I mean, he mumbles, he kind of acts like he doesn't care. He speaks in just fragments, like he's tough to understand, and that's when he was proud of what. You know what I mean? That's when he wasn't being charged. So now I'm just wondering what's going to happen. I don't think they'd ever put him on the stand, but
Well, who knows with that? That's a game time decision for sure. I don't know if I would put him on there.
I definitely wouldn't. If he sounds like he does now, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so let's segue into Karen Reed trial. So we have a new date, which I'm kind of shocked about that they came up with a date so far, January 27th, 2025. I guess since the first one went so well, they're going to try it again.
I mean, look, anything can happen between now and January. And there's the motion argument is August 9th at 2 p.m. That's right. First. I mean, I'm surprised that that's even going to happen. But
well, yeah, the motion to dismiss, I had written that down as a bullet point, right? So August 9th at 2 p.m. So I guess everybody's going to be glued to their preferred YouTube channel. Probably the Shaming of Jay. Probably be running that.
Me too.
You're going to be doing it too? Okay. Yep. So the first one we know didn't end well for the prosecution. They're going to now have to do this with the possibility of not having your case investigator, Trooper Michael Proctor, right? That's still up in the air. There was a hearing that you had told me about, right? Did you hear anything about that?
No, so that's the thing. I didn't hear anything further. So I don't think that anything happened. I think Michael Proctor is still, nothing has changed. He is suspended without pay. And we don't know what's going to happen. I think that though, Joe, probably not. I don't think anything will necessarily happen, anything crazy, but hey, knock on wood, you never know between now and August 9th. But I think between now and January, there's going to be things that come out about Michael Proctor. There's probably going to be some things that come out in the Birchmore case that might be related to Karen Reed with the FBI. So I just feel like we'll see. I think anything could happen between now and then. It's a long time. It's a long way away.
And Teresa has a great question here. And it's a question that everybody, is probably wondering at one point. Says, Joe, do you think the feds will ever do anything about the district attorney? I'm assuming you're meaning about Morrissey, right? I honestly, I had thought Morrissey would just skip over this if Proctor was no longer a member of the Massachusetts State Police and just say, I can't go on with the case. My thing is done, and just, kind of retire early. That's what I thought might happen. But, we've heard a lot about the feds from the first case, right? Doing all this stuff, but we really didn't see anything during that or after the fact to kind of tell us that the feds are kind of, I always tell people the feds are always lurking in the background. They know they got their, this is definitely on their radar because of some of the allegations and of corruption and everything else that goes on between the Massachusetts State Police. And we know that there's been lots of complaints against the Judge Beverly Cannoni. But
I mean, they did bring in ARCA, so we know that they did something, and they You know what I mean? I mean, that was one of the most powerful parts of the trial, in my opinion. So I think that, yeah, where his work record. Oh, I would think so. But Joe, what do
Yeah,
you think? Yeah,
I would think so. And if he let's just say something, he doesn't make it through this inquiry that they're doing against him, right? So this internal investigation finds some massive kind of information, and let's just say
yeah.
he gets fired. Um, how would they go about replacing that unless they have to show the video of him testifying from the first time? I mean, that's
Everybody saw it, right? Everybody saw it. I mean, it made headlines. So whether I mean, imagine the jury the next time around too. Like, who's going to want to be on that jury after all the drama that's ensued? Like, I mean, if you read the one affidavit from that juror, one juror said they pulled their car over to make sure they weren't being followed. That's
yeah.
scary. I mean, like, I kind of don't blame them. That's really scary. I'd want that list impounded too if that was me.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into the craziness that's still happening in
Yeah.
regards to this. I mean, I see it on Twitter. I just avoid it like the
Yeah.
plague because
I
it's
know.
just
I know.
there's a
No,
lot
I
of things I
agree.
avoid. I just, you just tell people, you know what, you're right, and move on. It's
Yeah.
it's absolutely crazy. But here's the thing. So they did a street interview with Alan Jackson, and it appears as if the original defense team will be in play, right? So the
Oh, I
new,
didn't see this.
yeah.
Oh,
So they said, yeah, he said that he and not, excuse me, not Alan Jackson, it was Yannetti that said,
Unity. Yeah. Okay.
Yannetti,
Okay.
sorry.
I didn't see
I got
that
I
either,
I got
but
it. Yeah, so Yannetti has said that the original team is going to be there, so we're assuming that means Alan Jackson, and then they
yeah.
brought in a new guy, I forgot his name, he was just there temporarily to handle the August 9th motion. So they're bringing in like a closer, so to speak. They're
Yeah.
bringing in a professional to just do the motion, because if they can win that, this thing doesn't go any further. So
Right.
that
Right.
that's the, I guess that's the right defensive move. I mean, we'd like to hear from a lawyer on that part, but I think
His
that
name
would
was
be,
Weinberg, I think, the last name
yeah, that's,
Weinberg. Does
I
that
think
sound
so.
familiar?
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I was wondering who that was. I was like, I don't know who that is,
And
but
they asked him, though, they said, is he going to stay on the case if this doesn't work out? And he says, maybe. So there might be another member added on to this going forward. So it's going to be interesting. I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning in on that. I tell you, it's for a lot of people, I think they kind of got PTSD from the last trial. A lot of
I
people,
can't imagine doing that. I'm like, I cannot imagine. I don't think that people are necessarily going to be paying that close attention this time around, only because I don't see what more evidence you can produce. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were
yeah.
all waiting for the evidence to make up our own minds as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but that was me, where I was like, all right, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got. It's not really a surprise anymore. I know what's been put out there. I know the initial investigation, and you can never redo that initial investigation, which was such a big part of this. You can never, it's only going to get worse. The I don't recall, I don't remember. You think in 8 months from now they're going to remember more? Like, I don't, it's so
It's
silly
going
to
to
me.
be
I'm just
really
like,
interesting to see. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting
yeah.
to see how, does DA Morrissey choose Lolly again to do this, or does he bring in another prosecutor to try? I mean, these are all questions I don't know the answers to. I'm just throwing that out there, right? I
No,
mean, we haven't heard.
agreed. I totally agree with you. I think, yeah. And also, like, this is, I don't know. I mean, I thought about this too. Like, my other show, Primetime Crime, Jarrett, he's a former prosecutor, and he's very much like, we want to support the families if the families really want us to, try this person again, because it ended up in a mistrial. But also, he said, we also listen to the people as well. We work for the people, we work for the state, and it sounds like the state is way more divided on this than anybody realized. In the favor, I believe, of not trying this again in criminal court, just because the first trial seemed like I don't know, not super prepared on the state's end. And this, I'm not making this up. These are just like stats I've read from like Court TV, people polling Law and Crime. They do all of those polls. So I'm taking that information, and, it's just like,
Well,
yeah,
I'm sure Court TV and Law and Crime and Network are going to be like all for this, because it brought lots of eyeballs to the TVs and the videos and and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the live stream. So
Yeah. And TMZ even covered it the other day. I was shocked. Oh, thank you
so
so
thank you,
much.
CH, for putting that up there. Like I said,
Thank
so
you.
unfortunately for the mods, until I can find a better replacement, you're gonna have a little bit more work to do
Thank you. I
in regards to
appreciate it.
sharing that kind of stuff. So make sure you run over there and subscribe over to Lauren's
Mhm.
channel. She's growing pretty fast over there, so it's actually kind of cool.
No, so Pop Crime is my own, and then Primetime Crime is one with Jared. But the Pop Crime, I've had that channel. It was under a different name. I've had it for years, from, I told you, my entertainment days, but it just kind of stagnant for a while. I had subscribers, and now I'm just trying to. Now it's, you guys, YouTube is so hard. I don't understand how to get people to watch. Like, I don't
Yeah, it's
understand.
like
I
everything
need
about
help.
social media. There's always good and bad with everything
Yes.
that comes with it
Yes.
all. So that's something to deal with. But there was we're not going to be talking about Karen Reed per se, but I don't know if you saw this. There's a website, Boston.com. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so they had put out about a couple of days ago that the Massachusetts State Police were under investigation again. This time, it was a undercover drug buy that happened. I think it was in 2022, and the judge has now overturned their sentences and now granted them new trials. And here's I had to write some of these things down because
What?
yeah, talk about some of the things that
Yeah.
we hear, right? So he said that the judge ruled that the Massachusetts State Police violated wiretap laws. They said that they were not properly trained, or there was not or they did not have proper policies in place during the recordings that they did in 2022. The operation was poorly organized. So there's some things that, yeah. So this now another hit for the governor, of course, because this is,
Yeah.
the state police is run by, somebody she chooses. And
Right.
I'll tell you though, on top of this other stuff with the Karen Reed, and then there's now, impending decision on Trooper Proctor, and then and now this case that comes out, boy, there's some things that could be really damaging to the Massachusetts State Police.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you read this, but right around when the trial was starting, I believe, maybe, I don't know, my timeline could be off, but it was recent. The MSP, they were also under fire for, did you see the whole thing about the commercial driver's licenses? They were taking
I
bribes,
I
some of
heard
them,
something
yeah,
about that.
to
Yeah.
just, renew and give these commercial driver's licenses. For people that don't realize what that is, it's like they're signing off on anybody can be a trucker in Massachusetts, which that's hard. I'm sorry. Like, I can't drive a big rig, Joe. I would literally kill everybody on the highway. I'm like, that's what would happen if I gave the police like a security system for their house, or it was really stupid things, like very stupid things. They would be like, yep, no problem. Here you go. And they got caught. So yeah, lots of things are happening.
Yeah, no, I had heard about that too. I had heard about it. I didn't read about it. So I wasn't so familiar with it, but it's another serious allegation that comes out to is like,
Yeah.
you kind of just scratch your head, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, how much more do you have to see before you start really taking a look at your executive staff
I
and
know.
a redoing of the policies and procedures and the training, right? I mean, if you're bringing in a new person, let's just say, because I think that the colonel there now is only there temporary,
Okay.
so he's been there in a capacity until they could choose the person that they want. I mean, he can ultimately be the person
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end of the day, but they go through a board system, right? So the governor picks a couple of people, and then they sit in front of a board, and they go through. But when you're watching some of these um, open forums, boy. Now they shut
Yeah.
them to the public, right? Because they had so much vitriol and rhetoric going on that they
Yeah.
had to put them on Zoom. I think, right? Is that true? I think they put them on Zoom the last one.
I haven't seen those meetings be aired, like the one where they announced Kevin Albert was, I think that was the select board meeting or something. But
Yeah,
let me ask you, how would one even go into a department like that, which appears to be so broken and it's also large? How would you even go in and upend that and pick out your good eggs from your bad eggs, and how do you revamp that? I mean, it seems like it's
yeah.
damage
That's
is
just
done, but
that's a great question, and I think that the person that they choose should already have some experience in reforming police departments.
okay.
So reaching back to somebody who might just do this temporarily to kind of clean house and get things in order. Kind of like we see in corporate America where things are going bad and they bring in, like they call them, the Axeman, right?
Yes.
He comes in there and starts getting rid of people and changing things. So
Yeah.
this person, whoever they bring, I think they need to bring in somebody who's done this before, somebody who has somebody on their personal staff who is good at the training aspect of it, meaning writing policies and procedures, working with the law department in order to make sure that it's a solid thing, getting accredited if they're not accredited already, right? And
Yeah.
then take on the task of retraining everybody. Well, they have to, right? At this point, they
Yeah.
have to do something.
Or like, what about, and again, this is, I could be just talking out of my butt because I don't know the protocols, but like when it comes to punishment and suspension and just like, can they make it tougher? Can they sit there and be like, okay, we're coming in here and from now on, if we catch you doing XYZ, it's automatic this. Is that allowed? I mean,
Well, that has to be written in the policy and procedure, right? So
yeah.
that could be other things that are lacking. So, like for instance, we had it very clearly in the policies and procedures in New York City that you cannot take anything, you cannot be offered anything that was over, I think it was $75. I think Massachusetts has something similar. I think it was like $50. I think their limit
Yeah.
was, but it had to be approved, right? It has to get approved, so it has to go through a chain of command.
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of things that could be brought in to this discussion. But I think at first, I think you bring in somebody who is a temporary person who's not planning on making this a career to come in there and just clean out, just start
Okay.
cleaning out house. And listen, I mean, no one has ever asked me that question before, but it's actually kind of interesting because now I'm just starting to think right off the top of my head. But
Yeah.
listen, I mean, to me, the training aspect has to be revamped. I mean, the crime scene protocol, not only for the uniform cops, but for the investigators and how that's
Mhm.
handled. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
number one. And then,
Everything.
and then of course, your vehicle traffic accidents and stuff like that. I mean, your Massachusetts State Police, that's really your bread and butter, these collisions.
Yeah.
They should be like spot on. Mia Beto, thank you very much for gifting those 5
Oh,
memberships. I
so
really
nice.
appreciate that.
Yeah. That's so nice. Yeah. I just feel like, Proctor should serve as a really good wake-up call for a lot of people there, or I should say people that work there that maybe are on the same path as him. But yeah, I feel like the only way to I guess amend this also is to make examples out of people and say one strike, you're out. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about corporate America in my old company. Our company was doing horrible. We had a new COO come in, rattle things up, shake it, fired like 5 people off the bat, and we're all like, "Oh God, okay, we're listening, we're listening." So,
Well,
yeah,
sorry to cut you off on that, but you just sparked a memory. I mean, if I remember correctly, when Commissioner Bratton came into the New York City Police Department from transit,
yep.
his first order of business was he gave all of the chiefs their resignation letter and told them to sign it and leave the date off it. And leave the date off it. And I'll
I
tell
did not
you,
know that.
yeah, I think, well, I don't know if that's a story of lore or that really happened.
Yeah, yeah,
But whatever it is, it sent, even if it wasn't real, right? It sent
yeah,
like, reverberations throughout the whole thing because the executive staff are the men and women that actually can put those policies and procedures in order. I mean, that's basically what their job is. I mean,
yeah.
the people on the lower rungs just follow it comes from the executive staff. So yeah, I
Yeah,
basically threatened to fire everybody on the spot and just leave the date off.
that's
And
so
it's,
crazy. And,
yeah, I mean,
and
but it also, you also find out now too, as the new person, who is on your side, who's really, who's going to play the game, who's not going to play the game, and it's kind of interesting. But there needs to be a lot of effort to be put in here, and we know that the governor has spoken out about this now twice. So,
yep,
and if you recall on our shows that we were doing this, I had said this before it even happened, that there was, heads were going to roll. They have
yeah,
to. And
yeah,
people pushed back on that. They said, no, it's not going to happen. It's too,
yeah.
it's a pandemic over there, with all this stuff. But this is the only way to start making the changes. I mean, the culture, changing a police culture is extremely difficult.
I can't
And
even imagine. It's in that culture specifically, which appeared to be so misogynist from the outside in, and I'm just asking you, it's also different. Like when you have a city or a state job, you can't, like, there's so many different rules and like actual laws that go into working, for these places, like the police department, fire department, even, the Metro North, like all that stuff. Like it's tough, Joe, right? You have to go, it's like everything takes much longer. I feel like it's not the same. You can't just come in and do whatever you want. But I could be wrong.
Well, and I mean, and then the argument comes down to is, though, do you bring an outsider in, or do you have
Yeah,
somebody, from the inside? Well, I mean, if you believe that the inside is poisoned, that might not be a good idea. And that's why I would suggest
you're
bringing in an
right.
outsider just to clean house. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's and tell them, listen, he or she, whoever it is, listen, you have a year. That's all. You're out after a year. So work on it fast. And I think
yeah,
if they bring in somebody like that, I think they can really get things done.
yeah.
And but that person has to have excellence on his or her staff too. They have to have specialties. You have to have somebody who has a very big
Right.
investigative background, somebody who has the training background, right? So you need to bring in several different people in order to do this, and then basically tear it down and start over. Get that whatever that
Okay.
patrol guide is. Because they have their patrol guide online,
Oh,
and but it's
okay.
I read through it. Whatever it's, I'm assuming that it's not the full patrol guide online, because if it is, boy, there's lots of
It's bad.
holes in their policies. Yeah, but I'm
Oh,
assuming
wait, you should find out. What if it
I'm
is their entire
assuming yeah, I'm assuming that's just the public version. But
We don't know that. We don't know.
we don't
That's
know that.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Wait,
yeah. I
really
was
quick. One question for you. I had a friend that was NYPD that gave me this card, and it was an NYPD card, and he signed his name on it and the date, and he said, "This is for you to use if you ever get in trouble," meaning like a speeding ticket or something. And he said I could give it to the op. Is that true? And the officer would, if I didn't like commit a violent crime, but like,
you could try to do anything these days. Unfortunately, those cards can be bought on eBay, so they
oh,
really they really don't have much
I was
in the way
saving
of
it. Not that I did
yeah
anything, but I don't
yeah.
know what I'm saving it for. When I like assault someone, I
And
have no clue.
they come out, yeah, well, that isn't going to get you off on anything. Yeah, so don't I wouldn't I wouldn't count on anything,
All
that's the
right,
kind of thing.
fair
Oh,
enough.
bold and snarky is in there, my spirit animal.
But I love that.
That's my brother from another mother over there. So welcome, bold and snarky.
Bald and snarky. I love that.
All right. So we will move on. We're over the halfway point. We have 163 people watching us right now. We had just finished up with Karen Reed, and we had started off with the Keefe D, or the was it Dwayne Davis, right?
Dwayne Davis, yes,
Dwayne
Dwayne
Davis with
Davis.
the Tupac
Mhm.
Shakur case, and we covered Karen Reed and the Massachusetts State Police. And
Yes,
let's switch gears. This is a case that, even though we haven't really heard much in the last, I
yes.
guess, week or so, any good news, and we haven't heard any bad news, of course, I want to still keep this case
Mhm.
going, this Nikki McCain case.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I just think it's important that we keep this case. This woman has been missing since May 18th, for those of you that don't know. And here's the thing, Lauren. I ran a poll I do quizzes 6 days a week, and I run
Yep.
a poll on Sundays. And this week's poll was, have you heard of this case? And I think before we got on, there was like 880 something votes, and only like 545 people, 545 people said they hadn't even heard about this case. And I'm like, if you that means you're not watching our channel, because we're talking about these things too, which makes me a little
Yeah.
nervous.
No.
But
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
No.
there's still a lot of people that haven't heard about this case.
Yeah, and I
And
think that's what's frustrating to a lot of people. And I don't know if I said this on your show because I've been talking about this case a lot. So forgive me if I have, but this was the same area, Redding, California, where Sherry Papini disappeared. And the entire town or area was turned upside down for Sherry Papini. They spent $150,000 in taxpayer money looking for her. An additional GoFundMe was set up for Sherry. $50,000 was raised for that, and she made national media. I took the time last week to go through and see if Nikki had made any type of national news. Nothing except for Nancy Grace. Nothing. And I reached out to News Nation because like they're so on top of that stuff usually. one of my girlfriends is a producer there. And I'm like, can you guys do this? I can get you. Cause a lot of these places, they want to do the story, but they want the family members. And I'm like, I will connect you with her sisters. I'll even connect you with Brian from USPA. And they're like, yeah, the news cycle right now is like really big on, last week was the RNC. Trump got shot. Like they were just like, we're doing this. And so we can't really do anything else right now. And I'm like, okay, so you're kind of telling me it depends on the news cycle, which I get, but imagine that's your family member. I swear, I don't think I could handle all of just the politics that go into getting cases covered and getting the word out there. But you had discussed the other week, the reward is up to $30,000. I do remember discussing that.
Yep.
And Brian Fitzgibbons from the USPA is still there working really closely with family and friends to figure out just Nikki's last steps. We know that there is motive there because she was going through a domestic violence case and it was set to go to a jury trial in July. We found out that, Nikki was trying to keep her family together. So she was having contact with Tyler, sporadically from May until July. And we know that she was last seen at this hospital visiting Tyler's brother with some of Tyler's family. And we know that she was last seen around 11. But I think something that people had brought up on our last live stream for Primetime Crime with Brian is that why has the Shasta County Sheriff's Office not made any type of statement about this? Because people get upset thinking law enforcement's not doing anything. We haven't heard anything. Well, Joe, as well as anyone else, they're not going to tell you.
No.
But don't they? And Brian kind of said otherwise, and so did Jarrett. They're like, well, they don't have to put out a statement. No, of course, you don't have to do anything. But don't they usually just say, we're working tirelessly, where no rock is unturned? Just say the right thing so the public knows that you're doing something. They haven't done that.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that one because if you remember the Sherry Papini case, whatever, they did a little in the beginning and then they went total darkness. They went total silence for like 2 years or whatever it was. They didn't say boo about the case. So
because they knew they were damage controlling that shit. Like they were right.
But they didn't come out and lead on that they didn't believe her, right? So they didn't do that. They kind of kept that under wraps. And listen, from law enforcement perspective, I explained this a number of times. You never want to say too much in the public because if there is a suspect, if you believe that there is a suspect, you might tip him or her off and then things start getting destroyed, evidence and that kind of stuff. So you want to be really careful with that. And also too is that, unless there is a threat to the public really doesn't need to know everything that's going on. And a lot of people don't like that answer or that response. But, one thing that I haven't heard a reporter ask is that question. Is there, with her missing, if they, do they believe that this is a crime? And is there a threat to the public? I don't know if I've ever heard that question asked.
Well, that's a tough question. This is the thing. I can sort of, see, I don't think I can even speak to that actually, Joe, because there absolutely could be, but that's what they're trying to prove right now based on rumors in town, let's say about drugs. And rumors in town based on who certain people surround themselves with. I'm not local. I'm not actively investigating this on the ground. I have had many sources come to me, tell me this, which I send directly to Brian Fitzgibbons, who will go and try to validate this information or, say, nope, that's BS. That's not credible. And then we have to keep it to ourselves, obviously, but you're absolutely correct. That is at the top of many people's minds. And I think a lot of people think they know the answer. I can't speak to that specifically yet, but it is definitely being looked into because I think it's a possibility. Absolutely a possibility.
Just wanted to give a shout out to Jersey Jen for gifting that membership. Thank you very much, Jersey. I really appreciate that. And I hope you're doing well. I did a number of interviews on the Sherry Papini case. And it was one of the things that I had said about a year or so into it, and I kind of said it, I kind of off the cuff, and that I made it into, I don't remember what paper or what magazine or whatever, and I had said that thing. I said, listen, they're not coming out and telling us that there's a, an
Yeah.
organized kidnapping ring going out there abducting runners off the thing. So I think they think it's something else, which is basically a nice way of saying they don't believe, right? They
Well,
didn't
you know
believe it.
what? You know what, Joe? You and again, not to switch gears on cases, but it's the same with like the Sebastian Rogers case out of Tennessee, the autistic boy who was
Yeah,
15
that was,
who
we covered
disappeared.
that in the
Yeah,
beginning too. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
terrible
in
case.
February. And I'm still trying to cover that, but that's the same thing. They never once, I was looking up just pedophiles in the area. I was just, there's a park nearby his house. I was looking, I just law enforcement never acted like there was a potential kidnapper, child kidnapper. So what does that mean? Where do we see this investigation going? We know that normally, and you know this as well, if family members are looked at first because they are the ones that technically would have the most motivation, and the statistics show that it's been family members in the past. So with Sebastian Rogers, it's just like, you're so right. They never said anything to the community about like, oh, be careful, be vigilant, there's protect your
Right.
children. Never
But
heard anything.
they could also, yeah, because I mean, I've seen this happen in New York with children who were autistic that went missing, that wound up, uh, unfortunately deceased in a lake or somewhere else. So we have to be careful when we talk about things like that, because there's always another edge to that, right? So yes, family members could be involved, but also this kid could have just wandered off too, right? So there's a big
Yeah.
question, and then fell into something, hurt himself, fell in a hole or a ditch or something. I mean, I know there's
Yeah.
been searching and all, but yeah, I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah,
a
and I
lot.
wasn't blaming.
Oh, I
Sorry,
know
I
you're
want
not.
to be
Yeah,
clear. I wasn't
yeah,
blaming. I'm just saying, like, they have to look into the family members first. And well, actually, I should say, in the Sebastian Rogers case, if anyone follows that, I had to take a step back because I just was like, my head was spinning because people were so horrible to his family members,
oh
horrible,
my
and
God, we're
and
seeing that a lot lately. It's bad.
yes, what is going on with that? The victim's family is getting harassed. That's so nuts. It's crazy. And in the case of Sebastian, you witness, I remember I witnessed stepdad fight back, quite a few times. And it's kind of just like, you don't blame at first, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. And then you don't blame people after a while, Joe, because like we know, like you can only take so much harassment before you have a bad day and you're just like, all right, you want to go? Like, you want a piece of me? Let's go, you know?
Yeah, well, definitely people can get, frustrated and fed up too, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, we listen,
Yeah.
there's no filter on for some people on social media, and they use the anonymity of social media to really go after people too. So it's kind of, it's sad to
Oh,
say that.
yeah.
But,
Yeah. But with
you know,
Nikki, you're right. There's been no one's actually directly asked. But they haven't had really a chance to ask anybody this, right? Because law enforcement's not taking questions, they're not holding press conferences or anything. And I hope that's because they are close to.
well, I always tell you, people, when they're silent too, you have to just, when that silence comes out, they're usually working on something. So I think everything, could be patient. I don't know for
Yeah.
sure, but I mean, that's just a guess. But the issue that comes,
Can I ask you something else? As law enforcement, I was watching an interview about a missing girl. She'd been missing a year, and law enforcement was accused of not really doing anything about it. And he said multiple times in this interview, they won't stop. And this girl that's missing is like 12 or 13. They won't stop until they bring closure. They won't, he kept saying, well, we won't stop until we bring closure to the case. Well, we won't stop until we bring closure to this family. Joe, not once did
is
he
that the
say,
chief?
yes. And he was the chief. Yes. He just didn't say we won't stop until we find her. We won't stop. It's almost
Yeah.
like, okay, so this is just a recovery. It's not a search and rescue. Is that what, why do they
Well,
say that? It's
well, yeah,
chilling.
I do this quite often when I listen to the Chiefs talk, and I always tell people, it's important to see when you're watching these press conferences or these interviews, what they say and what they don't say. And that could be something that you could read into something that doesn't sound like it's good news. In regards to what they meaning the police believe. in what happens. And I always try to, to shy away from certain things like that because you don't want to douse the
Yeah,
hope that the family has. But if that's what they're saying, it doesn't sound like they plan on having a happy ending to that whole situation,
it
whatever that
does,
case
right?
may be.
They're
Yeah, I
like
don't like the way that
closure.
sounds.
Yeah, it's just she's been missing a year. I mean, there was no evidence of foul play, but obviously it's a criminal investigation. But I'm just like, why not just throw in one time? He said it probably 4 times closure, one time to say until we find her. Just throw it in there, or because
Yeah.
you can interpret that however you want. Maybe it's just me and you and maybe people that are watching who follow this stuff regularly. But I was a little disturbed by that.
Yeah, no, it could be it could be interpreted as bad.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
let's switch gears. Try to avoid any, I guess, adjectives to describe Sarah Boone, but
Oh,
Sarah Boone has now sent out a bulletin from jail requesting another lawyer. I think she's had 8 resign. Right.
8.
I know a lot of people. A
Yeah,
lot of people think that she's firing them. I don't think that's the truth. That's not accurate. I think they're
yeah,
resigning. They're just saying, I don't want to be bothered with this, so to speak, in
yeah.
nice lawyer terms. But
Yep,
so I think she had 8 resign. She's, I guess, the ninth, right? Because she's representing herself. So now she's
yeah,
seeking the 10th. So I guess she's not happy with the ninth, the way the ninth is handling it, aka her.
yep,
Um,
yep. That was
boy,
insane.
oh boy.
That was insane. And I don't think initially people didn't think that flyer was real. Like I had tagged Kirk Nurmi
Yeah, I
on
saw that.
Twitter, and because I was texting with him, and I was like, I just did a part 1 on Sarah Boone. I wanted to talk about what happened with Jorge Torres, blah blah blah. And I said for part 2 I might be hitting you up, and he's like, what? I don't know anything about a woman who abuses her lawyer and and I'm just like, he was obviously being sarcastic,
Yeah,
and then
tongue in cheek. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And for those of you that don't know, Kirk defended Jodi Arias, and he got cancer after that. Literally, his body like shut down, and now he's gone through this incredible transformation where he retired from the law. You can see him on court TV now. Wow, this is like a whole Kirk plug. Yeah, but yeah,
It's all right.
she.
Kirk's good. Kirk's good people. You could plug Kirk as much as
I
you
know
want.
he's amazing. He's so great. But yeah, I tagged him in this, and he's like, wait, this is real? And I was like, yes, this is real. This is where it came
Yeah, a
from.
lot of people didn't think it was real, including myself. But yeah, Jersey Jen said she fired herself. Not yet. She's trying to.
Yes,
She has
exactly.
requested the judge to help her find an attorney, and she listed all the qualifications that this individual has to have.
Oh, yeah. It,
But
it was
I
insane.
think
Yeah.
I think they're going to have to do something though, because if they let her represent herself, I mean, they're only asking for a retrial. This is a Florida case too, right? It was Winter Park where this happened.
Winter Park. And I just want to point out, Joe, you should know me also. I'm not going to post anything that's not real. Like I will not. I will vet the
Oh
hell
yeah,
out
no,
of
but something,
it. So
yeah, I know, I hear
yeah,
you. I mean, but
yeah, no.
it's like when you look at that, you go, nah, come on,
Oh,
somebody did this on
yeah.
Photoshop, right?
No, 100%, 100%. But yes, it's Florida. And so I looked up some of the laws there, and what she could face for second degree murder. So she minimally, it's like 16 and a half years she would have to serve, and then maximum it's life. So I I think this is pretty simple here. Very simple. She is guilty, or I believe she is guilty based on the evidence that is already out in the public. Um, and then I think it's just a matter of what they sentence her to. And I think at this point, her mental stability here is what's going to get her possibly less time, because she appears to be not all there. But I don't know. I could be
Who
wrong, but
knows?
the
Yeah.
I will say, like, the suitcase video is one of the most disturbing things I've ever watched, Joe. I get like I just how I don't I'm like, how? So of course you have 10 lawyers when you allegedly zipped. I yeah. So
Well, like I said, hey, listen, when you put something in front of a jury, you never know, right? So we're going to let this
No
play
way.
out.
Oh, I just feel like there's I mean, the only
Oh,
way I see it's like how could her lawyers ever get that thrown out, right? They could never get that thrown out ever.
well,
I
yeah,
mean,
so the trial starts October 7th. So we're going to
yeah.
have all these pre-trial hearings. But in one of her letters that she wrote to the judges that she still hasn't gotten the discovery yet for this case. Um, so I don't know
Mhm.
exactly what is going on in regards to this. I think, listen, there might be a good possibility that this gets pushed off and somebody has to be forced to be her attorney, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, her defense of uh a battered women syndrome, this is what is tough. It's like, of course, you absolutely want to believe all women, 100%. That's the goal, right?
Yep.
With Sarah, you look at the past, like the 2018 police report, and Jorge's story makes a lot of sense. And Sarah, she bailed him out of jail. Would you? I mean, and I know this is a cycle, and it's not that simple. But each time she would have him arrested, which, by the way, Joe, they would both get arrested for. It wasn't just him, because she would take part in these, these battles basically, and then yeah, she would bail him out of jail. So yeah, I think
Yes.
that's going to be a tough defense.
So Naomi, it says, Joe, she had the discovery. Apparently, it was sent to her the day after she filed the last letter, the flyer.
Oh,
Okay, so
okay.
thanks for that update, Naomi. We'll take a look
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I'm just saying, like, he said she choked him or something. Oh, I'm sorry. No, she said he kicked her like down the stairs or whatever, and he was like, yeah, because she was choking me or something like that. Like, it just made a lot of sense. He was like, I was reacting to what she was doing. So, and again, this seems to be a pattern here where they both get arrested, they're both taking part in it. So I'm not sure. And she also, when he's in the suitcase, she says like one thing. She just says it's mainly about him cheating on her. So I believe that he probably did cheat on her. But she said like once, oh, this is for when you choke me. But she never said like when you kick me, when you beat me, when you know what I mean? Like if
yeah.
that's her own video, wouldn't she say this is for when you beat the hell out of me or when you do this? But it was really focused on cheating. So I don't know. She might be painted as like this woman scorned, I guess.
Well, I mean, listen, there's a couple of cases that are in the going on right now that has to deal with around domestic violence.
Yeah.
One woman, Marcia Thompson, right? She
Oh,
is
she
it
got
Marcia or Marcia? Marcia
yeah,
Thompson. Yeah, she was just found not guilty.
yes. Yes,
Yeah, the
she killed her
self-defense,
husband.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, self-defense. And here was the interesting part of that case with Marcia Thompson is that she actually took the stand and testified in her own behalf. And I've been listening to some of the pundits, and they think that was a smart move because she was able to, really put out the fact that, to lay out the domestic violence part of it for a long time. I think dating back as far back as 2011, and then,
Oh.
yeah, so Tommy puts, yeah, Ashley Benefield, who I keep on confusing with the lady on News
Oh,
Nation. I keep
Stanfield.
on
Yeah,
writing,
yeah,
yeah, I keep on writing the wrong name, but that's another Florida case, right? Ashley Benefield.
yeah.
Um, she's been charged with the murder of her husband, and she's been charged with second-degree murder. And
Oh,
he was supposed to be estranged, right? So they weren't together anyway, but it was about self-defense is the defense's argument too, because it was about domestic violence. So we're going to be
okay.
playing. We'll be. I think according to Tommy, it says it
Ashley
starts
Benfield.
today.
I don't know
Benefield,
this
yeah.
one. I'm gonna
So
look
this
that
guy, I think,
up.
was I think this guy was a retired military guy. He
Okay.
was, according to what we just know from what the public records show, that he was
Yeah.
shot twice. Um, they don't tell us where the bullets entered from.
Okay.
I mean, that could, listen, that doesn't mean anything per se, because the time someone pulls the trigger to sometimes somebody turns around, if they were running at you and turn, that splits. There's a lot of different things that
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to what do you call it about that. But according to one of the reports I read, is that the body was found away from her, from whatever the story was, and that's what led to the murder charge. It's going to be interesting
Oh,
to see this because, like I said, this is now another domestic violence case theme. I'll say theme for lack of a
yeah.
better adjective, because this is
Yeah.
what the defense is, right? So you see Sarah Boone's bringing up the defense of domestic
Yep.
violence. You had the Marsha Thompson case, domestic violence. You had this Florida case now again with Ashley Benefield, where the part of it, is the defense's thing is that this is in response to domestic violence, and she this was self defense.
Yeah.
Listen, we know that domestic violence is a huge problem in our country, and how do we
Right.
go about fixing that is something. And I'm just going to put up the domestic violence hotline. This is the domestic violence hotline for the whole
Yeah.
country. God forbid you're in a situation that you can't get out of, because a lot of people say, well, why don't they just leave? It's not that easy.
Not that easy.
You
Yeah.
can't just
No.
leave. I mean, listen, I've dealt with this. I mean, listen, hundreds of times, in the police
Yeah.
department, from being a cop and then a sergeant and doing all that stuff. I mean, people are, they're beaten psychologically,
Yeah.
physically, everything. They're financially cut off. I mean,
Yep.
it's not easy for somebody to just pack up and leave. And
Yeah.
and sometimes I read some of that. People say, well, why don't you just leave? Where are you going to go? Right? I mean,
I
oh,
know.
they could go to a shelter, and then you end up being victimized by someone else at the
I
shelter too.
know. I
So
know. And I think that we all saw with Cassie Ventura, like, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. You see this beautiful girl on red carpets and she's smiling, but behind closed doors, she's getting her head bashed in. Who would have ever thought that? And who would have ever thought that Cassie Ventura couldn't leave? She is I think her coming forward and that getting released was just really good for other women to see and to look to Cassie, as someone that got out of this and that made it and that has her own beautiful family now and persevered and that you can escape and you can go through hell and you can pick up the pieces. And I just totally put this in a different direction, but I'm hoping and praying. I feel for her in the sense that, I don't know if they're ever going to pursue Diddy for her and for what he did to her. It's going to be the others. And if she will feel vindicated, and she will feel
yeah,
like,
well, they actually have that attack on video, so it's going to be hard for the, it's
the LA DA's office already said, oh, we can't prosecute that. Like right away, they said that. And you're like, okay, well,
there's a statute of
that.
limitations on the assault. That's the thing,
Yeah. So that's why I was like, I don't know if she's going to ever feel like she got justice, but I guess, we'll see. But I was just looking at the Ashley Benefield one. That's tough. I mean, I'm looking right now that they went to church every week. He was a military vet, and it was a custody battle as well. And this is just me skimming this article. But it seems like she also has a lot of supporters, which is I don't want to say if that's good or not, because I haven't dug into this enough to think that or know what really happened. But yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of victims of domestic violence, and a lot of people sometimes, if you're fortunate enough not have to deal with it, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to understand. But take
Right.
it from me, who had to deal with victims of this, whatever. It's not easy. It's just, you just can't just get up and walk away, and you try and you feel for.
Did you ever get like so upset about somebody that came in and that you just like had to excuse yourself, or do you just, as a sergeant, do you just compartmentalize all that stuff? Because I would imagine you saw horrific things. And
Yeah, I was pretty good at compartmentalization for sure. You're dealing with that, but I mean, there were times when you would respond to a domestic violence incident where someone calls the police, my husband's hitting me or whatever, and you get there, and you don't see any visible injuries on the person. You can see that maybe she was visibly crying, but you don't see any visible injuries, right? And that's something that's big. But in domestic violence, the police had that ultimate say, so to speak. Well, at least in New York City, they did. And there were times when the husband was be like, "You don't want me arrested, do you, honey?" Like right in front of you. So you say to yourself, like, this guy is trying to manipulate her right in front of us. What do you think is going to happen when I walk out the door?
Yeah.
And I used to turn around and say, my man, it isn't your choice. It isn't her choice. It's our choice. He goes out in cuffs. I wasn't going to leave that guy behind.
Yeah.
If you try to intimidate somebody in front of the police, they're taking you out. It's as simple as that. Because if you don't and you leave and God forbid something happens, they're going to ask you, well, what did you do? Right? And unfortunately, it's a lot of times, you arrest the guy, you bring him back, and they'll bail him out, or he'll get out and he'll go right
Yeah.
back home. But because of that's that financial strain that this person doesn't have. Maybe they have children and they don't have a job, and they
Yeah.
don't, do. So
Yep.
it's just something to really consider.
Yeah.
Cakes Boo, thank you very much for that. Super says, I urge anyone in domestics to get out independent advice from a specialized domestic violence psych counselor to plan your plan. Yep, it can hurt, but it might help. Yes, Cakes Boo.
Yeah.
Kind of like your plan to, leave the party early, right?
Yeah. And
Have
I
a
think
have a plan to get out.
it's important to also remember Micah Miller. I mean, what she went through, that case is horrible. And not to say that, yeah, her, what is that? Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. We're same wavelength. But well,
Yes.
talking about domestic violence, right? Like she couldn't take it anymore. And it's god awful.
Well, there was a couple other things, and then we're going to be ending this on that point. But the sister has come out and has made statements now on News Nation, and I think he did an interview on News Nation too. If I'm not, the
He
pastor
did.
guy. Yeah,
Jack
I think that
Fox,
might be.
Analyze that maybe.
Behavioral evidence people are going to have a field day with that.
Oh, totally.
So
totally.
we are over the hour. Listen, Lauren, thank you very much for your time. Make sure you guys go over to her channel, Pop Crime
Thank
TV
you.
on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to that. And everybody, you hang out for a second.
Yep.
Lauren, everybody else, have a great day. Head over to I think Defense Diaries and Jay have their stream going up, and then later on this afternoon, Gizla True Crimes got her show. Make sure you guys check that out, and all the Grizzlies. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you soon.